I'd like to call the September 4th, 2024 Board of Selectmen's meeting to order at 6:30. Do we have any need for a non-public session?
Madam Chairperson, we do under RSA 91A3, Roman numeral 2, lowercase a, compensation, lowercase b, hiring, lowercase c, reputation, and lowercase d, acquisition of property.
Okay, thank you. First item on the agenda, we have the minutes of August 7th, 2024. Does anybody have any changes or corrections? I do. First one is on page 8. And it is, let's see, going from the bottom, it is 1, 2, the third from the bottom, where it says Mrs. Murray. It says there is 300 in the Libby budget. It should say in the Libby Capital Reserve Fund. Can you speak into your mic, please? Okay, sorry. All righty. 9 on the top of the next page, when you go through where it says E, that's really F at that point. Those are the only two I have. Any other?
There's no others. I'll make a motion to approve them as amended.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion by Brad, second by Dave. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, next one, August 14th. And we have 2 sets of minutes. We'll take the first one, which was the morning meeting where we met at the Household Hazardous Product Facility. Does anybody have any corrections or changes? Hearing none, can I have a motion?
Motion to move the August 14th special meeting.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, I have a motion by Dave, a second by Brian. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
All righty. Now we have the second set of minutes for the 14th.
So I have a couple of corrections. On page 3, the first reference to Mrs. Murray, it should say Chris, not Dis. On page 3, the fourth reference to Mr. Deshays, it should say Nemba, not Nimba. N-E-M-B-A, not N-I-M-B-A. On page 3, the last reference to Deshays, it should say park, change park to part. I believe that's it.
Any others? Hearing none, can I have a motion?
Second.
I have a motion by Dave, a second by Brian. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, next set of minutes is the August 21st. I have a number of them. The first one starts on page 8. And it is before the second motion, the second time I'm speaking, and it should say, after the last, it should say household hazardous waste collection. Alrighty, that's that one. On page 9, Annie DeBeer is spelled, Annie is A-Y-N-N-E. DeBeer, let's see. On page 11, it's the first time I'm speaking from the top of the page, and it says the 2017 report did address moisture in, and it should say unheated building. And on page 13, other business, at the end, after the semicolon, it should say needs to go to the planning board. That's all I have. Does anybody else have any corrections and changes?
Move to approve as amended.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion by Brian, second by Brad. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Ready, those are done. I'll open up the first public hearing. The Wolfeboro Board of Selectmen will hold a public hearing on Wednesday, September 4th, 2024, at approximately 6:30 p.m. at the Great Hall Town Hall, 84 South Main Street, Wolfeboro, New Hampshire, for the acceptance of unanticipated funds in excess of $10,000 in accordance with RSA 31:95-B3A to accept an anonymous cash donation in the amount of $25,000 to the town of Wolfeboro, to the town's welfare department, warmth and more fund, and to fund an employee holiday celebration. Is there anybody who wants to speak to this public hearing? This is an anonymous donation that we seem to get every year, and it allows the employees to have a wonderful holiday party, and it also provides money for heat, electricity for people who need some assistance. Is there anybody who would like to speak to this public hearing? Hearing none, I'll close the public hearing. Board members, is there any comments, questions?
Move to approve an anonymous cash donation in the amount of $25,000 to the town of Wolfeboro, to the town welfare department, warmth and more fund, and to fund the annual employee holiday celebration.
Second.
All right, I have a motion by Brian, a second by Dave. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor? Aye. Okay. Opposed, there were none. All right. We'll go on to the next public hearing. The Wolfeboro Board of Selectmen will hold the second of two public hearings on Wednesday, September 4th, 2024, at 6:30 p.m. at the Great Hall Town Hall, 84 South Main Street, Wolfeboro, New Hampshire, regarding amendments to the Town of Wolfeboro Ordinance, Chapter 140, Article 3, Sidewalk Obstructions. Jim, do you want to say anything to this, or do you want me to do it?
Sure. So at the last meeting, which I was not present for, the board made some recommendations for changes. I'll quickly go over what those changes are. You have them in front of you. The changes are highlighted in green with strike-throughs. So under section 140.17, they wanted to remove April 1st in favor of March 15th. And then further down in the paragraph, you wanted that to reflect March 15th as well. So we've captured that as requested. Under section 140.19, there were a couple of items under A. First one was simply an apostrophe within the term owners, and then minimum standard of 50 inches or free walkable space. So that was corrected. Under B, the same thing. Further in the paragraph, for locations of objects and for cleanliness. And then toward the end of the paragraph, it's changed from dishes to dishware. Item C, you struck the entire sentence in favor of a business is limited to the number of tables and chairs that fit in front of the business that do not impede the entrance of the sidewalk 50 inches. The select board will review each application and establish the number of tables and chairs to be allowed. Further down in the same section E, Wolfeboro Board of Selectmen may consider other objects on the sidewalks on a case-by-case basis. This was to capture the intent behind the pianos, and other things like that that might come up from time to time. That was the context of the changes that I received that were incorporated into the proposal.
And those were suggestions that happened at the last meeting. I had went in, talked to Jim to have them put in here, and the board, I think, will need to discuss them and vote on them if that's how we want the wording to go. I thought we'd open up the public hearing anymore and then see whether we want to change any. We may want to make other changes once we hear from the public. Is there anybody in the public who'd like to give public comment?
Thank you, Linda. Alex on owner, Bradley's Hardware. First, I'd like to understand, or I think the public wants to understand, the reasoning behind the change in ordinance in the first place. I would think the changes in ordinance would be because something is wrong, and so I would like an explanation as to what is wrong that is driving this change in the first place. And my second comment is what Jim just said is news, I think, to the public, where he just said 50 inches or a walkable path. Is that the correct verbiage? Because that, the walkable path part, or what, if I'm paraphrasing it correctly, was not spoken about at the last meeting, so that's a change, I believe?
No, that's just a suggested change. None of these
Okay.
changes have been voted in.
Okay.
They were just gathering what people were saying at the meeting and to see if any of this would clarify it, just like if we get input
'cause-
today from you, we might change and reword stuff. So this is
Because
just,
50 inches or walkable distance is, in my opinion, 36 inches, which is the current zoning.
I think the
so-
or needs to go out. I think it was of 50 inches free walkable space.
Okay.
I think the
So-
or is just an error there.
If the board could just, a quick explanation to the public as to the driver behind the change in zoning, that would be helpful.
What happened last year is we were having a lot of trouble with tables and chairs and then railings, and it was cringing more and more on the sidewalk, and it was hard for people to pass. And so we established an ad hoc sidewalk committee of residents of the community. We did a survey, and these are the suggested changes that came to the Board of Selectmen from that committee, and it was addressing the problem of not enough space on the sidewalk for people to easily move last summer. So that was what the driving force was, and so that's why we set up the committee. Brian?
And the chair of the committee was actually a business owner in town. He chaired the committee for us.
So that's the reason. It was a concern that had been expressed to us. Is there anybody else who'd like to speak?
My name is Cindy Patton. I own Black's Paper Store. I guess I'm confused because if we submit a permit, let's say, and we have on the permit that we're going to have 3 benches, a sidewalk sign, and 2 clothing racks. And let's say that it's a terribly rainy summer. So we have to change out one of the benches for a clothing rack. Then I have to come back to you and go through that whole permitting process again. I mean, that doesn't really give retailers any flexibility with what they're putting out on the sidewalk by having to submit a plan initially. I mean, a lot of our business is weather-driven. And I'm sure you've seen, we've had windbreakers out on the sidewalk because it was rainy for 2 weeks, and that's what people needed. I feel like it's creating more paperwork for us during the 12 weeks during the year that we have to make 3/4 of the money that we need to get through the winter. And I understand about the tables and chairs. I get that. I had the opportunity to be across the street at the post office to observe that someone who had a dog who couldn't go into a restaurant sat outside at a table outside with a dog. I watched them make sure they had the dog against the building so that it didn't impede anybody's process. So, and then there's a lot of times where it's just so hot downtown that nobody's sitting at any tables or chairs. So there's nothing that's interrupting or impeding anybody's progress along the sidewalk. But I also witnessed someone on a motorized wheelchair almost run down two of my customers who were walking, and this person was behind them, and then swerved out into where the cars diagonally park to get past these people at a speed that I didn't think was appropriate, and didn't check in the crosswalk to see if there was anybody coming from the other direction. So I worry a little bit that there's going to be a lot of people who will decide that they want to exercise downtown at that time, and they're going to be running past racks and tables and chairs. I see most people use common sense, and I think most of the retailers and the businesses are using common sense downtown. We're not interested in a liability suit, and we're certainly not going to put racks and chairs out there in order to make it so that somebody is going to be upset or hurt. I mean, that's not our purpose. We have 5 seconds to get somebody's attention to get into our businesses. And this baloney about social media driving your business, well, it does to a certain extent, but it doesn't put people in your store. Signs and racks and benches do. And it gives the impression that we're a very welcoming town, and we've set it up for anybody of any ability to be able to be downtown. I just worry that you're creating a situation that's going to be tough to enforce. And then when we did that economic development survey, we were asked as businesses what we needed downtown. We need help. We don't need more paperwork. So I hope you'll reconsider this. I really do.
Thank you. Is there anybody else who'd like to speak to? Sure.
So I think that we can all kind of conclude that it's tables and chairs from restaurants that are the driver in the potential change in the ordinance. Is that correct?
That's where it starts. Yes, that
Okay,
is.
that is correct.
And signage too, some signage, they've been putting up the sandwich board signs, and they can block a whole sidewalk
Okay,
so that nobody can walk on the sidewalk. The whole flow of traffic, people walking, they're walking out into the road and around and then back
okay, well,
onto the
sandwich
sidewalk.
boards I can completely understand. But it seems to me like you're looking to limit the current number of tables and chairs or restrict what is already in existence.
We're trying to
From the
make
summer.
sure they're back far enough that the
Right,
sidewalk
and at the
is walk.
and at the last meeting, I think we all concluded or agreed that they were okay as it sits. We're just looking
They
like
were
you would-
not, they were not last year. We had issues.
with
This
tables
year-
and chairs? Okay.
Yes, and railings putting up, and it shortened. That's what drove this to start with.
Okay,
So your comments are,
Yeah.
we had one set of comments. It's important we hear from all of you, so
And then-
keep on going.
my next point is going to be in enforcement. I believe it was the code enforcement officer and then the police department and then Mr. Pinio personally. Is that correct? I just want to understand if this is a rule that is even enforceable based on the workload of those individuals and departments as it sits.
My understanding, it's the code officer. And if on the weekends we have an issue, that either the police or Mr. Pinio can do a citation at that point, because it doesn't do us any good if the town hall closes and we don't have a mechanism. And
Correct,
that's-
exactly.
that's-
So I
that's
just want to
what
make sure
that-
that's understood.
That
And
is
then-
what it is.
And then the last thing that we did talk about last time, and this is completely arbitrary and very hard to enforce, is how far a vehicle pulls in beyond the curb. If you have a large SUV versus a Prius, for instance, I mean, they're going to be potentially an extra foot or more onto the sidewalk, and that's not the fault of the business owner whatsoever. And so I want to understand how this rule, or the spirit of the rule, or whatever changes are going to happen, are going to be enforced if someone pulls in and, breaks the 50-inch rule because of their vehicle that's independent of the business owner.
It's my understanding, and the ordinance says it, that the 50 inches is from the curb to whatever you have on the sidewalk, whether it be,
Okay, so, but that could very much impede the spirit of the rule. I get it, that's great.
Correct.
Okay, but if.
So if you've done,
If it's.
if the business owner has done their job and
Okay.
and their due diligence, and they went from the curb to their table or chairs, just say that, or clothing rack
Mm-hmm.
or whatever, and a car pulls up over the sidewalk, that's not the business owner's fault. You've done your due diligence.
Okay, so
and
if
everything's
the
good.
code enforcement officer is patrolling downtown, for instance, and 5 minutes previous to the people, the patrons sitting down at a table, meeting the ordinance as you're describing, someone with a Yukon pulls in, and now the sidewalk is 15 inches narrower than it was 5 minutes previous, is that going to be a problem?
Not if the measurement is from the curb to the
Okay.
chairs. It's the
I
placement
just
of
want,
the
I
chair.
guess the reason for my comment is that the spirit of the rule then goes away. That's all. That's all I want you guys to think about, is that I get it, that's great, but the point is that that you're not blocking traffic flow from pedestrians, but that will occur if that's the case. That's all. And it's going to happen no matter what. It's just how it's enforced. That's all I want people to think about.
Here's a funny thing too, because I've had people come to me over and over again complaining about the cars parking angled over the sidewalk.
Yep.
Because one of the people has a handicapped family member, and they say it's hard to walk down the sidewalk when those cars come over.
Mm-hmm.
Small SUVs, compact SUVs, actually encroach over the sidewalk more than your Jeeps and your large pickup trucks. I have pictures to prove it.
I don't doubt that. I just want to understand,
I
I just
share
want
the
to
design.
understand how the spirit of the rule
Yep.
is going to be enforced.
I just don't want to blame only pickup trucks or only big
Well,
cars.
no, I'm not. It's
or
just,
that.
my point is,
Got
a
it.
vehicle that
Got it.
overhangs the curb
Yep.
that wasn't there 2 minutes previous when the restaurant owner thought they were abiding by the rule. That's all.
Yep.
You understand what I'm saying?
I got it.
Okay,
Yeah,
that's it. That's my
I hear what
point.
you're saying. Yep.
Thank you.
Okay. Is there anybody else in the audience who would like to give us some input on this? Come on up.
Hi, Deb Skelly, owner of Bailey's Bubble downtown. And I totally agree with Alex and with Cindy on all the points that they have brought up. The one thing that I do think we should consider is that if people have outdoor seating, that they have availability for trash outside. I see a lot of trash on the tables, and there's no place to put it. So that's one thing that I think should be considered with this. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else who'd like to give us some public input? I did receive an email from Mary DeVries. I am the representative to the chamber, and the Economic Development Committee town has asked what businesses need, and businesses answered, your help. Proposed changes to the sidewalk ordinance are not helpful. The town should maintain the ADA guideline width of 36 inches to the sidewalk passage. We also received the following input. I do have a question regarding the blocking parking spaces. Obvious, my concern is Bailey's Ice Cream. Right now, it only happens after 4, and I am not open anyway. My concern is that it might set a precedent for other businesses to follow and create issues with parking. We already have limited parking for shoppers and visitors downtown, and blocking off 3 of the spaces just makes it harder. Again, I only raise the concern on precedent. Bailey procedures with this are not affecting my business and therefore not a problem. I will point out that the cones and the blocking of the space do not happen until 5, or is it 5:30? 5:30. Yeah. So when that was granted special permission by the Board of Selectmen for that, and it was really in a time after the businesses are closed. So that's what I got from the Chamber of Commerce. Is there anybody else in the audience who'd like to give us any input? Hearing none, I'll close the public hearing. Board members, what would you like to do with this?
So Linda, I wanted to clarify one thing. It says that, and this is for Mrs. Skelly, any object placed on the sidewalk must be monitored for location of objects and cleanliness, which includes trash and dirty dishware removal. So we do have it in here that if restaurants do have tables and chairs out, they are supposed to, and if they don't, that becomes a littering ordinance. So we do have that covered with the police littering ordinance. And there is a police ordinance that says if a car impedes over the sidewalk when they park, and it's at the officer's discretion, that is a parking violation, which is considered equal to parking on the sidewalk. So there is an ordinance to cover that also.
Board members. Dave, do you have any comments?
Nope.
Brad?
Yeah, after listening to tonight's comments that were presented to us too, I'm kind of leaning towards having the changes in the ordinance address mainly the tables and chairs and the tent signs, because there's so many other little small things that come out, not necessarily even daily, like Cindy, we have, the chamber puts on the sidewalk sale days where a lot of the businesses will come out and put their racks out on the tables out on the sidewalk for the weekend. And I've never heard any complaints at all about any of that kind of stuff. So I'm okay with the closed rack being outside. And as I said too, as Cindy pointed out, these business owners, they want it to look good. They don't want to impede or have it be a problem in front of their store. They want the public to be able to have access and have it look good. And, they're trying to draw the people to the businesses here. So my opinion would be to kind of leave that part of it alone and really just address the tables and chairs and the tent signs that we've had some issues with them coming out into the sidewalk more than they should be, so.
Yeah, I guess, I had a problem with it even in committee in terms of coming for a permit. I think that and I think I'm with Cindy, it adds another step. I think what the intent is in terms of table and chairs, we may be able to reword that. In terms of sidewalk sale days, they come for a temporary event.
Right.
Those can go forward without any of them. I'd like 14020 when it's just addressing A-frame signs, because I think if I look at it, probably the biggest offender are A-frame signs in terms of impeding the walkway. I question, do we really need a penalty? But I think there's concern about whether the town is willing to enforce things. So I would kind of like to rewrite some of this, is my feeling. Ryan?
So, it will have the same intent if you wrote this to have address tables and chairs and signage, but then also keep it that the open area of the sidewalk should still remain at 50 inches. Therefore, someone could put out 25 clothing racks, and as long as there's 50 inches, there's 50 inches.
I think that's true, and I think that's what kind of the changing in C was to try to say, it depends upon what it looks. What happens on Main Street and what happens on Railroad Avenue are very different in terms of the size.
And I just want to have people understand where I'm coming from. I have two 85-year-old parents, and I've seen lots of other elderly couples who try and traverse the sidewalks, and it can be very difficult if you only have a 36-inch wide path. If two people need to support each other, or someone needs support from someone else, or if a wheelchairs are not 36 inches anymore, a lot of them are much wider. If someone is walking a small child, if an adult set of parents has a handicapped child with them, 36 inches becomes problematic for a lot of people. So we want to be open and welcoming to people shopping. We also want to be open and welcoming to everybody walking on the sidewalk, regardless if they're going to a restaurant, to a store, or anything. And so this is not something new. When the committee looked at this, we went to small towns and larger towns all through the state to see what other communities are doing to make their areas more walkable. That's a big goal to people, is to have a more walkable community. And so part of that is trying to make it so everybody has the opportunity to walk down the sidewalks, not just young, healthy people.
Well, I think when we saw the survey, that was the main thing. They wanted to be able to walk on the sidewalk, and I think you're right. That's why we went to the 50 inches in order to have that amount of space. But I'm questioning whether we do a permit. We can still do some of the others without doing a permit, and that's why I said, do we want to rewrite some of this? And I have no problem with what's up with the A-frame sign. So if they didn't have a permit and we had it just as an ordinance and that we left in the penalty, then that really would leave us.
Yeah.
So I don't know where any other, Brad, how do you feel if we rewrote some of this?
Yeah, I'd be, amenable to that. I think that could be a good approach here. Because there's not really a lot of changes that we're talking about. The 50 inches is obviously new. We kind of rewrote 14019C there, a little bit about the tables and chairs. But a lot of it is, I guess, yeah, so I'd be amenable to rewriting some of this and possibly not requiring permits, have it be more just the ordinance and see how it goes. I mean, we can always address it later too, so.
Brian? Okay, so am I hearing that we are comfortable removing 14018, which talks about the permit, and the $50 for the permit, or does somebody have an issue with that?
I would say we should probably take this back under advisement. Each of us change it a little bit the way we think it should go, and we should have one more public hearing on it.
It's going to have to probably go through the whole public hearing process again, because it will not be the same document that we have here tonight.
So I don't think now is the time for us to change A's, B's, C's, and D's. And
Well, if we don't have consensus, if we have consensus that where everybody is okay with doing away with the fee, we can get rid of that paragraph.
Yep.
If we're not, then we can do what you're saying. I thought I had kind of heard that, and I was just
I mean, I'm okay with. I mean, we have parking ordinances, and you don't need a permit to park. So I understand. Yeah, it's fine. We can get rid of the permit. We can get rid of
I'm just looking at that paragraph right there. Are we all comfortable getting rid of the seasonal sidewalk permit
Yes.
and the fee related to it?
Yep.
Okay, so that's out. And so what we're really needing to rewrite is 14019 objects, and 14020, I think we want to keep, but we should review that. And then everything else seems to be pretty well stays the same. I'd have to reread that, but the real changes are going to be in 14019.
Yep.
Yep.
Okay. So what we will do is I will not put this on the next agenda. We will not vote on it. We'll take it back, we'll rewrite it, and then we should have 2 public hearings again.
Okay.
And go through the whole process all over again to make sure everybody's in agreement. Righty. Well, thank you, everybody, for your public input. It helps us with putting things together. Okay. The next one is the Wolfeboro, I'm going to open another public hearing. The Wolfeboro Board of Selectmen will hold the first of 2 public hearings pursuant to provision RSA 53-C:3-A to consider proposal from Breeze Line, formerly known as Atlantic Broadband and MetroCrash, Inc., for a new cable TV franchise to be in effect upon signing. Is there anybody in the audience who'd like to speak to that?
Linda, if I could just make a statement before we do that. First of all, I want people to understand that this agreement is only for cable television services. This is not for internet. This is strictly for cable. There's a lot of talk about the contract out there, and I just would like to point out a few items about it. First of all, this is a non-exclusive contract, so if another provider did want to come in to Wolfeboro to provide cable services, they could do such, but they would have to do it to the same provisions which BreezeLine is currently doing. We have been in this existing contract with BreezeLine since June of 2011. That contract was with MetroCast and expired on June 15th, 2021. We've been operating since that time without a contract. We did hold one public hearing, and the item was tabled. This April, we reconvened the Cable Franchise Committee. The committee is made up of Peter Schneider, Tim Goodwin, Marshall Goldberg, David Wells, Kathy Dragonfly, Denise Velasco, and Howard Lowe. Brian Deshays and Paul O'Brien are Board of Selectmen members on the committee. We had the contract reviewed by legal counsel. Legal counsel's gone through it, made suggestions. It was sent back to BreezeLine, and we had a couple of questions that we sent back to BreezeLine for clarification. One of those questions was about the length of the contract, and right now we're 3 years with BreezeLine without a contract. So there was a conversation, can we enter into a shorter term contract? BreezeLine is opposing that, and that really is because of federal law notifications. If we were to do a 5-year contract, between the 30 and 36 month period, we'd have to go through notifications and initiate a cable franchise committee again to begin reviewing the contract and prepare for an ultimate signing of the contract. So with that said, the cable committee has gone through, they've answered all the questions. A couple of those members are here this evening to listen to public input. After the second public input session, the committee will meet, make a recommendation to the Board of Selectmen, and the Board of Selectmen may choose to enter into that agreement with BreezeLine on October 2nd, 2024, after the 2 public hearings. Again, I can't reiterate this enough. This is for cable services only, not for internet. And we have Fran Bradley, who is here virtually tonight. Fran is the Director of Government Affair Operations. David Hennessy, who's with us live tonight, Technical Operations Manager, and Mike Gordon, who's with us tonight, and he's the New Hampshire Operations Manager. Specific questions relative to the contract and the services provided would be best answered by them. That's why they're here this evening. With that said, if you want to take public input, and we can see if these gentlemen can answer the questions that the citizens may have.
Okay, so they don't have a presentation?
No.
Okay. Is there any public who'd like to give us any input on this? Come on up.
Good evening, Suzanne Ryan. I just lost your voice on my iPad. I don't know if the cable... Anyway, so this is for not TV, but for cable.
For cable
Internet.
television. Cable television, not for internet.
Not for internet, cable
Correct.
television. All right, I'm wondering if the same applies. In my area and other remote areas, they don't want to service If there aren't X number of houses on that street, they only go to a certain spot, and then they do not continue the line. I don't know if that applies to this company as well. Is that for the whole town? Currently, I cannot get that.
Fran, are you able to answer that question? Did you understand? Fran, you're not coming in. Your audio's not coming through.
I think what she's asking, was there any change to the service area? Because I'm at the same place as you are, Suzanne. If I want Breeze Line because of the population on my road, I'd have to pay to have them run the cable. And I think you're questioning whether this changed that provision.
Yeah, it seems as though the town gives them quite a nice contract for the whole town. And yet there are parts of town that can't get it unless we pay to run the line. And it's extremely expensive. And I think that it needs to take another look, because there are houses that have been built in some of the areas where they currently don't serve. And if it is their policy, they only will serve if there's X number of houses on that street, then maybe they need to loosen that and say, we'll go further on the street. I forget how many houses it is now, but it's a limited number. And
So based on the contract, the density requirement is 15 dwelling units per aerial mile. So that means 15 connections per mile.
there's a lot of streets that don't have up north Wolfeboro. I don't know about east, west, and south, but there's a lot of streets that don't have 15 houses. I mean, it should be a service for the whole town. I don't know why, I hate to use the word, but discriminated because we have a street with not a lot of houses. So it should be, if it's for the whole town, it should be for the whole town. I mean, use your muscle. Go after them and say, you know, you gotta provide more. That's my comment. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Karen Burnett-Curie. I'm going to give just one example of how unresponsive Breeze Line has been. My husband passed away almost 2 years ago. I contacted them to change the name on my account. They said they couldn't. They could change the payment method, but they couldn't change the name. I called back again another month later, another month after that, as I keep getting bills sent electronically to me in my husband's name. I finally talked to a supervisor who said I could complete a form. I completed the form, sent it in. I am still receiving bills addressed to a deceased person. I don't know how much more unresponsive a company can be.
Is there anybody else in the audience who would like to give us any feedback on this? Hearing and seeing none, I'll close the public hearing. Board members? Anybody have any questions? Concerns? All righty. Then we'll move on. This will be on the next agenda.
Correct.
Next item on the agenda is the bulk vote, the manifest of August 23rd was $356,888.15. August 28th was $1,587,857.26. And that last one must have a payment to the school district. We have property tax refunds and rebates, property tax exemption credits, land use change bill, intent to cut, tax levy, and there are 2 betterment assessment warrants, one for Stonehenge Road and the other one for Westwood. Does the Board of Selectmen have any questions or concerns? Can I have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the bulk vote, items A through G.
Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion by Brad, seconded by Dave. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Next item on the agenda is the board and committee appointments. This is an appointment to the Lakes Region Planning Commission, Transportation Advisory Committee, and we're being recommended to appoint Steve Randall for a term that will expire in 2026. Does any selectman have any questions or concerns? Dave Ford, we used to have on this committee, so I think it's a good idea that we have Steve go on to it. Can I have a motion then?
I'll move that we appoint Steve Randall to the Transportation Advisory Committee of the Lakes Region Planning Commission. Term expires September 2026.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, I have a motion by Dave, a second by Bryant. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All righty. Next, we're going to go on to new business, baby incubator box at the Public Safety Building. That item needs to be tabled. Can I have a motion to table?
So moved. Second.
Okay, so I have a motion by Dave, seconded by Brad. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
And that right now is scheduled to come back to us on the 18th.
Okay. We'll put it back on September 18th. The next item on the agenda is a Wolfeboro watershed application for a 319 grant. And this is, would you like me to do this? Kim, or
Yeah,
do you-
sure.
Okay, this comes from the Wentworth Watershed Association. They would like to have a 319 grant, apply for one for this coming granting timeframe. And at this point, the town has no town planner. The town planner is the person who usually oversees the grants. And they are asking permission that the Wentworth Watershed Association apply for the grant in their name. And this will be the 5th in the priority of best managers practices for the Wentworth and Crescent Lake Watershed Management Plan, and they're going to be in the process of updating that plan. Board members, anybody have any questions or concerns?
Is this something that Jim can sign, or do we have to sign it? No, I'm not sure.
It looks like she has it either the Board of Selectmen, she has it as a Board of Selectmen and Town Manager. Yeah, Jim, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, if you want to assign me to sign any documents relative to this, that's fine. It'll save you guys some paperwork.
Okay.
Yeah, makes sense.
Somebody want to make a motion with that and for him signing it?
I'll make a motion that the 319 grant that we apply for, that we allow the town manager, Jim Pinio, to sign the application.
Second.
Right, but the entity that's going to be applying for it is the Wentworth Watershed. Okay. All right, we have Dave made the motion, Brian seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Next item on the agenda, approval, single track alliance trail map and bridge approval. And Jim, I think you wanted to speak to this?
Sure. So myself, Dan Coons, and Linda spent about 3 hours, I guess, on Monday morning walking some of these bike trails. It was the first time I had an opportunity to walk them in about 2 years. And when we began walking them, it became pretty evident to me very quickly that we need to get better signage on the trails. It was not well signed at all. The other thing that was pretty interesting was each of us had a different platform to look at the maps. Linda had paper maps. I had one version of an electronic mapping system, and Dan had another version of an electronic mapping system. And the mapping was not consistent across the board. So that posed some significant challenges for us while we were navigating the trails, especially when there was no signage. And then we made it to the point of where this proposed bridge is going to go. The proposed bridge, I would estimate, is 40 inches in height from the ground level. And I do think that there's a reasonable alternative to the installation of this bridge. We talked it through with Dan Coons. Dan thought it was a reasonable method, and it would certainly make the bike trail much safer. The other thing in doing some research Monday after we walked those trails, there's a mixed bag of methods and recommendations for bike trail bridge construction. And there's one that's put out by IMBA, which is one of the bike groups, and that lays out bridges based on the technical expertise of a rider. However, the bridge that is being discussed here, again, is over 30 inches in height, and by building code, that bridge is actually required to have a clear span width of 48 inches, and it's supposed to have a rail of 54 inches in height, which the bridges have no rails. So that's a problem from that point. There is a lot of work to be done out there relative to the mapping of those trails, the signage of those trails. And I think that just based on my observation, the other area that we walked was what they wanted to do, the proposed Abenaki Down Trail. I think that half of that trail is something that could be developed and rode safely. The second half of that trail, I would have a lot of concerns about the installation of that. And that is because of the gradient and the terrain within that gradient that, frankly, it's an expert trail, and I think it is a recipe for disaster if we were to approve that trail. So with that said, I know Dan was bringing some of these items to the Wolfeboro Single Track in their meeting tonight for discussion. And there was also one area where I've got to have a conversation with Dave Didion regarding the spray field and the interface of the spray field with even just a walking trail, because it is, there's no separation from that sprinkler head to the trail. It's literally 10 feet away. So I've got to get that clarified with Dave Didion if that line is active or not. So I did find the walk to be very enlightening. The trails are quite impressive, and it does give me a desire to want to get out on them on a bike. But I think that there is some significant risk with a couple of these items, specifically the second half of Abenaki Down and the proposed bridge that wants to go in that I think we have an alternative to. And the signage is, I would classify, poor at best.
Yeah, I've got to agree with Jim, and I went out kind of deceived based on the mapping that they gave us. I think I finally have walked just about all the bike trails out there, so I have a sense of where they are. We're not in a position right now to approve anything. I believe we have way too many questions. One, the bridge, and what they presented to us isn't going to work. I mean, to have 3 maps and them all different, we really have to get one map so we really know where these trails are going. So my suggestion, and see what the other boards is, I would like to table this and that we keep on working to see if we can come up with something that will work and we can agree on, but I don't think we have something here yet. I think they did a very nice job trying to meet some of the standards that we were looking for, but when you walk out there, there's just way more questions that we really need to address. So I don't know where other members are on this, or what they would like to do.
I feel we probably ought to table this as well, because it seems like they're meeting tonight as well. So we won't have any information from them tonight. So I just would table this for another meeting.
Brad?
Yeah, I agree. Like just that, the fact that, in talking with Jim today too, the maps, and as you alluded to too, they don't line up. There's variations within them. We seem to have part of a trail is very close to possibly one of our spray lines for the spray fields out there. And Jim's going to check to see if that's an active line or not. As we were under with the understanding that everything was moved 75 to 100 feet away from those lines with the trails there. And then the fact that the signage doesn't appear to be up to the standard that we expected. So I agree. I think we have a lot of things we need to get cleared up and get on the same page with before we start expanding out anymore and approving new trails and stuff. So,
Brian, are you okay to table?
I'm okay to table. I'm just, I hope that as a board, we can get together on the same page on this sometime, because it seems like we're all over the place. We're here, we're there, we're back and forth. Let's get this all figured out.
Well, I think that's what we're trying. I think that's what the walk out there was all about. They gave us maps, they showed us pictures, and we went out with that to find out whether it provided us with enough information. Part of the trails that we were walking on were cross-country ski trails, and that's the problem out there, because cross-country ski trails can be closer to the sprinkler heads, but then people use them off-season for walking, and exactly how we're going to deal with that. And with those other trails going off, I think there is a place where they can move the trails away, but I think we've got other issues out there. So I think tabling is the thing to do. I think we need to see if we can get what we need before we approve anything else happening out there. So is anybody willing to make a motion?
I'll make a motion that we table the Single Track Alliance Trail maps and bridge to a future meeting.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion by Dave, a second by Brad. Do we have any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor? Aye. Alrighty.
One other item on that. I have actually been approached by a citizen who has an interest in being a liaison between the Wolfeboro Single Track Alliance and the Board of Selectmen. This was something that was unsolicited. The individual came to me and said, look, I ride these trails. I understand some of the issues out there, and I think that I can offer some assistance in being a liaison between the board and the Board of Selectmen and the Wolfeboro Single Track Alliance. The individual, his name is Chuck Sumner. Chuck is on our CIP committee. Chuck is on the zoning board. Chuck has become involved in the community over the past couple of years. Just curious as to what the board's thoughts on this would be.
My understanding, he is willing to ride the trails a couple times a week, which was kind of what we decided at the last meeting, that we wanted to have some way of checking on exactly what was going on out there. So I think that would be a good idea.
Can we offer him a stipend as a consultant?
I don't think he's looking for that, I would agree with you, but I can ask him the question.
Yeah, because it might be nice for him to get a stipend for doing that, and then a schedule can be formed and whatnot, and he can report to Jim or to Parks and Rec or to whoever you deem necessary.
I can have that conversation with him and come back to the board.
Anybody else have any comment on that?
I think it's a good idea.
Okay. You don't need a vote on that, do you, Jim?
Nope.
Okay. All right, next item on the agenda is approval, Mill Street Pump Station Project ARPA funding document. Jim, this you?
Okay, so I'm going to kick this off, and I'm going to hand it over to Brad. For those who aren't aware, Brad has been working part-time for the town for a little over a year now. We're finishing that up. Brad will be finishing his work for us. October 4th will be his last day. So first of all, thank you for that, Brad. And what this does is this allows us to repurpose some funds and put them toward the Mill Street Pump Station. With that said, Brad, I'll hand it off to you to dive into it a little more.
All right, thanks. What this is doing is, for the Mill Street Pump Station, we had ARPA funding and a loan, clean water loan there for that project. The original ARPA funding was $672,000 for that project. When the bids did come in, they came in over budget, so we are going to be putting that back out to bid again. We were, in our discussions with DES, we were told that the ARPA funding that we had for the Port Wayland Stormwater Improvements Project, which didn't get voted through at town meeting last year, the leftover funding, ARPA funding for that, could be transferred over to the Mill Street Pump Station. And that amount is $108,800 that we can reallocate from Port Wayland over to Mill Street Pump Station. So that bring that funding available for the grant up to $780,800 available for that project. So what we have here is, of course, the paperwork has to be, I's dotted, T's crossed, everything for the state, because it's got to go to governor and council for approval. So there's two separate votes and documents that we need to approve and authorize Jim to sign. The first one's called a certificate of vote of authorization for amendment number 2. What this is, this document certifies that the Board of Selectmen has voted in a public session to authorize the town of Wolfeboro to apply and submit a time extension and monetary increase in ARPA grant funds, and to authorize the town manager, Jim Pinio, to sign said documents. So that'd be the first one we need to do. Then the second one is the actual grant agreement, which is an amendment number 2 to the ARPA grant. And this document is the actual amendment requesting a time extension for the Mill Street project from March 31st, 2025 to April 30th, 2026. This amendment is also requesting the unused portion of the ARPA grant for the Port Wayland Stormwater Improvements Project of $108,800 be added to the ARPA grant for the Mill Street Pump Station Replacement Project, bringing the funds available from $672,000 to $780,800, and authorizing the town manager, Jim Pinio, to sign said documents. So we'll be looking for our two separate motions, to do this paperwork portion of it.
Does anybody have any questions for Brad? All right, hearing none, I'm willing to make the first motion. I move to authorize the town of Wolfeboro to apply and submit a time extension and monetary increase in the ARPA grant funds, and to authorize you, Jim Pinio, to sign said documents.
That would be for the certificate of vote of authorization, correct?
Yes, do
Okay.
you need that in the motion?
Yes, yep.
I'll
Good.
second that.
Okay, so that will be at the end of it, it's for the.
Certificate of vote. Yep.
Yeah. Okay, I made a motion, Dave, second. We're adding back in the certificate of vote to authorize at the end of that motion. All right. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. We have a second motion?
Yep. You want me to read it? Do you want to read it?
I'm willing to, so you want to start right from the beginning. I
Okay.
move
Yeah.
the grant agreement with the town of Wolfeboro and ARPA grant, amendment number 2. This document is the actual amendment number 2 to the ARPA grant, requesting a time extension for the Mill Street project from March 31st, 2025 to April 30th, 2026. This amendment is also requesting the unused portion of the ARPA grant for the Port Wetland Stormwater Improvement Project, $108,800, be added to the ARPA grant for the Mill Street Pump Station Replacement Project, bringing the funds available from $672,000 to $780,800, and authorize Jim Pinio to sign said documents.
Second.
Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, that's done.
Perfect, thank you. So this project, the pump station, as you're well aware, we've run into some issues with this. This will be going back out to bid this fall, and we're hopeful to have a concrete number and be able to have construction initiated in the fall. I believe this project will be a 400-day construction period is what it's estimated at. And one of the differences between the Mill Street and the Laner Street, if you recall, Mill Street is using significantly more state and federal funds, and there's a lot more restrictions associated with that compared to Laner Street, which there are not as many restrictions because of the not obtaining grant or federal funding.
Okay. That takes care of that one. The next one is open position and organizational chart update. Jim?
Okay, so there's been some discussions going around regarding open positions within the town and shifting of positions and responsibilities. And I've owed the people answers to some questions. Was supposed to deliver this the last meeting. Unfortunately, I was out ill, so I was not able to deliver this. So I've put together a brief presentation to try and explain the position that we're in. Seems like we're having problems with technology this evening. Wonderful.
He said there's nothing on the website. There's nothing through the television tonight.
Okay, I got it now. I guess it's working. Okay. So, first item here, this is a basic organizational chart of the town of Wolfeboro. Lays out Board of Selectmen, Town Manager, Executive Assistant, and then departments who report directly to the Town Manager. I would note, as you see down at the bottom left, the Wolfeboro Police Department, Communications, Animal Control, they report directly to the Police Commission. However, I would sit here and say, I think with a good deal of confidence that we work collaboratively, and there's really no issues there. They come to us, they let us know when there's budget issues, we work well together. Wolfeboro Public Library, same scenario, they report to the trustees of the library. We have an MOU in place for the relationship that's defined between the Wolfeboro Board of Selectmen, the town of Wolfeboro, and the Wolfeboro Public Library. And we use that as our governing document between the entities. And as well, the town clerk and the employees in the town clerk's office, they report directly to the Board of Selectmen and really have no oversight of the town manager. When you look down across here, the direct reports, finance and technology. Technology is under finance. Human resources, and I'll get into that a little bit, but human resources is actually a split position, which interestingly, when you think about it, the number of full-time people that we have in this human resources position is split between finance and human resources. It does create some challenges. Tax collector's office reports directly to me. Planning, under the planning department, we have code enforcement and the health department. Contracted assessing, Parks and Rec, under Parks and Rec you have maintenance, beaches programs, cemeteries. Libby Museum, director reports to me, the Board of Selectmen as trustees of Libby Museum, oversee the Libby holistically. Fire Department and Emergency Management and Public Safety Building are within their own entity, and the ambulance contract is under Fire Department's oversight. Municipal Electric Department, pretty straightforward there. Everybody knows MED and understands that they provide our power to us, and mornings like this morning when it goes out, everybody gives them a call wanting to know what's going on. Department of Public Works. Department of Public Works has a number of entities under it: streets, garage, buildings and grounds, solid waste. Each one of those have a foreman, and then you have water and sewer. Under the water division, you have treatment and distribution, and then you have the sewer department, and under the sewer department, you have collections, and then you have the contracted service for the wastewater treatment facility. Welfare, the welfare officer is actually Amy, who's the executive assistant for myself and the Board of Selectmen, and then you have the standalone Pop Whalen Abenaki Director of Operations. So that's a quick summary of the town's organizational chart. And quick. Apparently, I don't know how to run. Would you be kind enough to advance the slide, please? Okay. So, next slide lays out some staffing, and I apologize because it's dark in here, so reading is a little bit challenging, but that's perfect. Okay. So staffing based on the 2024 budget. We have 14 department heads, 11 of them report directly to the town manager. Police, it's the police commission, library trustees, town clerk report to the board of selectmen. When we're fully staffed, we have a total of 98 full-time employees. Currently, we have 9 full-time vacancies, 67 part-time employees, and we have currently 4 part-time vacancies. If you could advance the next slide, please. So one of the discussions that was brought up by Ms. Ryan, and Suzanne and I have spoken about this. It's interesting because when you go to our website, depending on the way that you go to our website, you access different materials, and the hard part of it is the management of that database is challenging because the website platform is vintage 2007. So you will see in the 2025 proposed operating budget a proposal to upgrade the website. It is desperately needed. And interestingly enough, Suzanne, when she said this to me the night that she got up and spoke, said that there's a treasurer position, and I was kind of blown away because at that time we were having conversations with our treasurer, and we created a timeline, which you can see on the bottom left of the screen. We created a timeline as to how we were going to replace our treasurer. Interestingly enough, when Casey, the finance director, Carl, the treasurer, and I sat down and talked, we had a conversation and said, you know what? Would it be at all possible for our deputy treasurer to step into the treasurer's role, and you, Carl, as our treasurer, take a step back and be our deputy treasurer for a period of time, and then when everything settles down, if you want to leave, you so can. And we had conversations with our deputy treasurer, Scott Smith, and Carl Baggy, our existing treasurer, and they were in agreement to that. So we had developed a plan, but we had never posted anything. And interestingly enough, when we made the transition in 2001 to the appointed treasurer as opposed to an elected treasurer, somehow Suzanne was able to pull up that job posting, which I have no idea how she was able to do it. And I showed her on my computer, here it is. She showed me on her computer, here it is. And we have no idea how that occurred. So at the end of the day, we do not have a treasurer vacancy. We are simply swapping responsibilities for our treasurer effective January 1, 2025. So our treasury function is solid and in good position. If you could advance to the next slide, please. So there was a conversation as well about our human resources position. So if you look at the job description highlighted in yellow at the top left, This position is called Finance Officer, Human Resources Coordinator. Now, as I just alluded to, we have 98 full-time employees. This position, the job description was last updated in 2016. In October of 2022, we did redefine the position to Human Resources Administrator, Deputy Finance Director. Simply a title change at the point. And the rationale is it's more contemporary with the titles with other communities of similar makeup. And this position is in charge of hiring, payroll administration, benefits administration, insurance, New Hampshire retirement system reporting, and really oversees the 200 series of the budget, which is made up of $5 million. So this position, when it's asked to do multiple duties, sometimes the human resources end of it gets put on the back burner for a little bit because of the timing associated with some of our HR or some of our payment and retirement system documentation that has to take place. Michelle, I can sit here and tell you, is scheduled to work 35 hours a week, and she's actively putting in more than 35 hours a week. When I have been absent over the past couple of years, I've appointed her as the acting town manager in my absence. The fact of the matter is, most of the time, the department heads are able to handle anything that comes up. However, most of the issues that I would have to deal with would be HR related anyway, so that's why we put her in there. There was no change in the job description. We just made a title change, and the job description essentially has remained the same. If you could advance the slide. So, to outline some of our current full-time vacancies based on the 2024 operating budget, and to list some of our history here. In May of 2022, the Public Works Operations Manager position was vacated. In September of 2022, the Public Works Town Engineer position was vacated. In September of 2022, the Public Works Assistant Director was vacated. And this was all in line with when Steve Randall came on board. So he literally was drinking from a fire hose for his first couple of months, trying to get his feet under him while these people had left. Water Department Superintendent position was vacated May of 2024. Water and Sewer Department Maintenance position vacated May of 2024. Fire Department Executive Assistant position vacated April of 2024, and we're onboarding that position at this time. Planning Department Planning position vacated July 2024. Pop Whalen Abenaki Director vacated August 2024. Technology position vacated April of 2024. Police Department had 3 openings. I believe they filled out 2 conditional job offers at this point, so this is not completely accurate. And Parks and Rec have 2 vacancies. We've transitioned 1 existing employee from Highway to Parks and Rec Maintenance. He does have some, he was actually originally hired in the Parks and Rec Department and wants to go back there. So we still have 1 vacancy, full-time vacancy in Parks and Rec, and now we have a full-time vacancy in the Highway Department. Next slide, please. So to try and summarize Public Works, Water and Sewer, again, Director of Operations position vacated in April 2022. Steve Randall was hired to oversee highway, garage, solid waste, buildings and grounds in September of 2022. And then during that same month, the town engineer position was vacated. So as a result, Steve Randall stepped into the director's position. At the same time, the assistant director position was vacated. That's an error. That should be September of 2022, not 2023. And then the superintendent of water and sewer, who oversees the water and sewer department, that position vacated just a couple months ago. You might remember in 2022, there was a warrant article to put to a new truck and an additional employee on. That was passed. In 2021, the department had 26 full-time employees. Today, in 2024, the department still has 26 full-time employees. Next slide, please. You might recall as well, in 2021, there was a warrant article that came in front of the voters asking to reorganize the Department of Public Works. That article failed, and as a result, we didn't implement anything. We didn't bring on a second engineer as recommended. That position would have seen asset management, technical review committee, capital projects, quality control, and safety. Didn't happen, and at this point we're using contracted engineers to provide a lot of that service for us. Next slide, please. When that Tata and Howard report came out, this is the organizational chart which was in place for the department at that time, outlining the positions and the responsibilities. And yes, some of the positions and responsibilities have shifted a little bit under Steve Randall's watch. And I think it's paid dividends for us. And if you could go to the next slide, please. And we'll get to what those look like in a minute. So this is, again, the recommendation from Tata and Howard. You'll see the section with the red circle around it. That was the position that was proposed that the voters said no to, and we did not fill. Next slide, please. This is the organizational chart that was presented as part of that reorganization warrant article. As you can see, at that time, we had between the administration of Public Works, highway, garage, water, and sewer, this oversaw $6.3 million worth of budget with 26 full-time employees and 3 part-time employees. Next slide, please. This is what that organization looks like today. And Steve Randall will be here on the 18th to talk a little bit about his organization and what we're doing there now. You may recall that we had a posting to hire a deputy director of Public Works. We went through an interview process and we received 5 candidates. We reviewed those 5 candidates. We narrowed that down to 3. One of those candidates withdrew. We put the 2 final candidates through, I would call a pretty intense assessment center that they had to give some deliverables, and they had to present to a mock Board of Selectmen's meeting. And we made the determination that we have the bandwidth to hire a director of operations, as shown here, and promote a water and sewer superintendent and give that individual the same title as director of operations to oversee water and sewer. Again, these 2 entities, these 2 individuals as a whole oversee a total of 26 people. So, and a contracted operation. Next slide, please. And Steve will be here on the 18th to talk a little bit and introduce those individuals. So the town engineer, we've been trying to hire a town engineer, and we have received one applicant of a professional engineer who's qualified. We reached out to him to schedule an interview. Upon reaching out to him, he had accepted a job in another community. So at that point, we brought on Brad Harriman in July of 2023. The objective of Brad was to try and assist with sewer extensions, sewer pump stations, and some minor surveying items that needed to be done. I did reach out in June of 2023 to receive opinion from legal counsel, and the opinion that came back was part-time employees can hold the position of selectman. Full-time employees are permitted from holding the office of selectman. Using a qualified selectman on a temporary basis while search for a candidate that can fill the position on a full-time basis is not prohibited. There are some potential issues with the town manager providing oversight over a member of the Board of Selectmen, but these are 5 members, and that would lessen the potential issues. So we did weigh this with legal counsel. We received the opinion, and as a result of that, we brought Brad on, and as alluded to earlier, October 4th, Brad will be all done with us because we will be utilizing those operations managers in conjunction with our heavy reliance on contracted engineers. Next slide, please. So there's been conversations about the assistant town manager, and this has been met with a significant amount of, I guess, resistance is the best way to put it. And my response to that is I fully understand. But I also fully remember coming on as a novice town manager, to say the least, and having finance directors in positions who weren't able to manage the finances of the town. I remember those days, and I remember the stresses that were put on myself, the town, department heads, and I do not want to live that again. At this time, when I put this together on August 13th, there were 9 finance director positions in the state of New Hampshire that were posted on the Municipal Association website. To give a little more history, in 2018, the long-term finance director retired. Finance director was hired in August of 2018. We heavily relied on the retired finance director who worked remotely. That new finance director resigned in April of 2019, just 4 months after I came in as the acting town manager. At that point, we began using a contracted finance director through MRI. She was a seasoned finance director with the town of Meredith, and she was of significant help and got us through a lot of very challenging times. Interestingly enough, MRI does not have any bandwidth to be able to take on finance director roles at this point. They, in fact, are as well looking and advertising for finance directors to help them with some of their other contracted communities. A new finance director was hired in October of 2019, and that was a rough period of time. At the time, we were still using Pete Chamberlain heavily, working remotely. We were using MRI. And just short of a year later, that position became vacated again. When we hired that position, we had 3 applicants, and none of them had municipal backgrounds. So we continued to utilize the finance position from MRI, and then we were able to actually hire a finance director who had significant municipal background and has created significant stability in that department. Short of a COVID year, audits have been delivered on time, relatively favorable, and she has put us in a position where that department and our finances, I would consider being sound, as reported in their audit as well. So the assistant town manager position, yes, that is my intention, to put Casey in there to be able to help me to alleviate some of these workload issues that I have, but as well to groom a new finance director. We are actively interviewing. We've received I'll guess, coin it as a mixed bag of candidates, some with some municipal experience, some without municipal experience. And right now, I think, based on what you're seeing here, I think one of the key indicators in a finance director is the fit. Being able to come in and manage our existing finances, do some forecasting, and not necessarily make wholesale changes. The two previous finance directors to Casey attempted to make wholesale changes, and they were not successful, and it resulted in problems, and we were fortunate to bring on Casey. So with that said, next slide, please. Why are we having challenges with hiring and maintaining staff? Well, we do conduct exit interviews. I do not conduct them. Michelle conducts them, and the reason Michelle conducts them, we believe that the employee is much more honest with Michelle. We communicate about the exit interview after the fact. The town benefits are outstanding, and I would consider them better than most communities. Our health care, the proportion that the employees pay is 10%, which there are not a lot of communities left that are doing that. We're one of them. I would classify the opportunity for growth of our existing staff as moderate, and you'll see that when Steve Randall comes in and gives his presentation next week, or in 2 weeks rather. We're promoting from within. One of the big challenges out there is work-life balance. I would classify it as good for some, questionable for others. And I think you can see the workload on some of the staff and understand, okay, this individual has a good quality work-life balance, whereas some of these others don't. Wages, I think they're comparatively low, especially at the entry level. Our entry-level wages are low compared to others. And if you remember correctly, in 2016, we did complete a wage study. It was proposed in the 2024 budget, however, it was removed due to the default budget. And housing in the area, affordability of housing, it's very challenging, especially with the entry-level positions. It's very expensive. And frankly, to close out, personality conflicts, they happen. And that's just one of the things that we have to deal with on a daily basis. So that's a quick summary of where we are at with staffing. We do have some challenges in front of us. I think we've made some good strides, but we've got a long ways to go. So I owed this to the board and the citizens. I hope that this answers some of the questions that you have about the staffing and the organizational chart and how the town operates. And I would be happy to take questions as people have them, or if the board has any.
Okay. Board members, does anybody have any questions for Jim? Jim is willing to take any questions from the public. Anybody in the public want to ask any questions about what he's presented? HR is Michelle Chamberlain. When he said Michelle, that was HR. Suzanne, did you want to get up?
Mr. Pino, that was a lot of work putting it together, but I think it was well done. It was very much needed, and it gives a good global picture of where we were and where we are. I have one question, and I don't need an answer tonight, but under the planning department, it used to be, when Hausman was here, partly when he was here in the beginning, he was the planning director. And there was code enforcement, they were separate. And then, I think because of his years of service and his knowledge and growth, they gave him a promotion, I guess you could call it, a title promotion anyway, and combined it all. And so then we had, I forget, the Director of Planning and Development, I guess they call it. I wonder if you would be open to the idea of separating that out again. It looks like there's difficulty hiring or finding a person of that capability with that title and years of experience to replace Hausman, actually, I guess I could say. I don't know the answer to that, but I think it needs to be looked at as a possibility. I really don't look forward to seeing a non-hire in that position for a much longer period of time. You don't need to say too much about it.
No, there's something that I would like to respond to that. Yes, we are going to be challenged with that position, and it's not just us. If you go to the Municipal Association website, there's upwards of 6 planners that are in New Hampshire right now, vacancies. You go to the Maine Municipal Association. When I went there in the beginning of August, there was over a dozen planner positions. Vermont had 2, and Massachusetts, I gave up after a dozen. So I think you are absolutely correct that we are going to have to become creative in how we fill that planner's position to get the right fit and be able to grow them. That is a critical component of the land use end of the world.
I don't know the answer to this either, but I understand it's a whole different ballgame, a different scope of work for the title that you're advertising for and a municipal town planner. So I would ask you to look into that. I don't know the intricacies of it, but I think it deserves looking at. Thank you. Thank you for doing that.
Duly noted, and thank you.
Any other comments? Come on up.
My name is Mike Bogat. It's not what I came here for, but under housing affordability, I was wondering about that. Kind of caught my interest because I remember just within the last year, the Ossipee Courthouse got given to a private school for $1. Now, I come from Lynn. In Lynn, that would have gone to condo rehab. You would have had 6 or 7 condos that would have been decently priced, a place where a teacher, a police officer, public works employee could live. You know what I mean? So when I see housing affordability high, I have to ask, is it really a high concern? Is it really a high priority? And I guess I'd ask, are you looking for any kind of grants, federal grants to help build low-income housing? Are you doing anything, you know, any positive things for that, or is it just something I put on the board? So just a quick question.
We have Harriman Hill in town that's in the process. It's federally funded, and it's a nonprofit organization, and they're in the process of trying to raise enough money to be able to build 30 more apartments. They have a bunch now, and
Do they have the land pointed out yet, or picked out yet where they're going, or?
It's part of their development. They have done phase 1 and phase 2.
And where is this at, please?
This is off Pine Hill.
Oh,
And you'll see it goes back there. It's not too far from our Public Works Department and the Hospital Street Fair barn. The road goes right in there.
well,
And
I
so
live in Birch Hill, so the back end of that
Yes,
is
is on
right
your
where
property.
you are. There was also a section where, my understanding is when they put the park in, they were going to put another section in. The town put the kibosh on it for some reason. And so I know there's another piece of land there that might be available if you guys were interested, you know, for low-income housing. Just bring it up, that's all.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Anybody else?
That's a lot of work. My name's Cindy Patton. That was a lot of work. I guess my question is how much were the employees asked for input into these job descriptions? Do you know what I'm saying?
I do.
If you're going to try to fill positions, those people know for sure how much work they're doing.
So just to give you a little bit of history there. So when the job descriptions were last reviewed in 2016, I was literally a new employee with the town, had about a month on as the fire chief. And I'll just sit here and say the job descriptions, when they were amended at that time, were only as good as the information provided to the consultant. Again, I was new at the time, so for me, it's like, okay, job descriptions, that's a priority. I was able to take, because I didn't have a lot of backlog of work at that point, and focus that and work with the staff and say, okay, look, we need to get these job descriptions updated because this is the basis of your job. I know for a fact that there were other department heads who didn't have that luxury because they were strapped for time because of their backlog of work to be able to dedicate to going through Public Works, 26 employees, sit down with them as a group and say, okay, we got to go through these job descriptions.
Yeah, not to mention the fact that they're on call.
Yeah.
And they're trying to keep their payroll under control for their department.
Yep. So one of the things that we do try to do when we bring somebody on board, we go through the job description. And, you know, in today's market with the staff, one of the things that we have to do is sort of tailor the job description to the employee.
You have to start where you are.
And give them a couple of things that are uncomfortable in their job descriptions. Back in the day when I was hunting for a job, you took the job description as it was because you needed to work. Today, that mindset has changed. So when we bring somebody on, we really sit down with them and go through the job description and try to lay out, okay, where are your strengths here? And are we able to assign tasks elsewhere that may not fall within your skill set? So we try to take a very active approach to help the employee define their future.
And then my next question is that And I know from what I've heard, that the surveying industry is falling under this same issue, that a lot of surveyors are aging out, and there's not as many young people that are coming into the profession. And so there's this dearth of surveyors and engineers. I'm not sure what the educational process is for a town planner. So is there a facility or university or a program within New England that is providing us with planners? I mean, this is not a position that's going to go away.
No. So Michelle and I have already had conversations, our HR coordinator. We anticipate going to college job fairs this fall.
Yeah, I
Because
almost
we're
feel
going to
like
have to
you don't have any
get
choice.
entry level.
At least you're going to get somebody who's has current information. You're not hearing, well, that's not how I did it at my other job. And you have the ability to create what you would call a better fit, right?
Yeah, because at the end of the day, in an organization like ours, it really is about the fit. And if you can make the employee feel as if they fit, they will grow and they will become part of that synergy to keep producing.
Collaborating. Okay. All right. Well, I was just curious if you'd taken the opportunity to talk to the staff in depth about it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
So I've already approached, 2 years ago, I started approaching UNH and some local colleges because I'm huge on young people with lots of energy who want to make it in the world, and there are still a lot of them out there. And at one time, I had also found a very, very experienced woman who might still be available to come to us as a consultant for the planning department. Between a young student out of college and an experienced planner with 30 years of experience, the two salaries together would end up being about the same as what our past planner was getting. And we have the ability of the young and fitting into the community and maybe buying into Wolfeboro and someone that can guide them. And they called that apprenticeship. That's what we used to do in all our trades. Our attorneys used to apprentice, everybody used to. So it's kind of, I'm looking at the old model and thinking that that's what we need to look at going forward.
Okay, is there anybody else who'd like to give us any public input on this? Seeing and hearing none, the next item on the agenda is the Energy Committee bylaws. And this has been given to us from the Energy Committee, Nancy Hirschberg. There seems to be a few changes to it. Nothing seems to be major. Brian, you're the representative. Do you have anything to add?
No, we have an energy committee now that has so much technical expertise like you cannot believe. There's 9 or 8 brilliant minds on it right now. So Nancy has opened up the committee, and it's 5 to 9 members, up to 3 alternates. And I'm a representative from the Board of Selectmen, and I'm allowed to be a voting member. Some committees allow, some don't. Nancy has reached out to me and asked me if I wanted to be a voting member and offered me that, and I thought it was very, very nice of her. We're changing the number of 3 to a majority of members will be a quorum. Makes sense if we're going to have 9 members. We just need a majority. And any member unable to attend a meeting needs to notify the chair, not any officer, but the chair of the committee, who will make a report available for that meeting if requested. So these are just housekeeping pieces. So I hope the board will accept these bylaw changes.
Well, I guess the question is, do we vote on their bylaws, or is this an information? We don't seem to vote on any other committee's bylaws. Is this informational, or is this that they want us to approve?
Well, I think Nancy was looking for approval because the bylaws will be recorded with the town, and so she thinks that it should be something that the board should approve. So I can make a motion to approve the bylaw changes for the Energy Committee as written and attached by Nancy Hirschberg.
Do I have a second?
Second.
I question whether the Board of Selectmen are the ones that have to do the bylaws of subcommittees, which is really the mission statement, or whether that is the committee as a whole. I don't have any problem doing it. Brad?
Yeah, and that, talking about that, I think the fact that the Energy Committee presented us with the changes they'd like to see in the bylaws, and have us basically approve them for them and stuff, but, it's not us making these bylaws for them. These are their choices that they want to see in there. And I know some of these other committees, we have had some input as to how large the committee can be, I believe, as far as the members onto the committee. So I don't have a problem with us making the motion and voting on approval of this due to those facts there that they're the ones that provided the changes. We're not doing the changes and pushing them on them. So
by accepting this, we're not expecting all other committees to do that.
correct.
I just want to make sure that we're clear on that. Okay. We have a motion by Brian, a second by Dave. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
And I probably should abstain,
Whatever.
being on the committee.
All right, we'll do 3-1.
Yeah.
Okay, sounds good. All right, next time on the agenda, we have a request from the staff that on September 27th, that we have our annual Employee Appreciation Day events and celebration luncheon. That the town manager is seeking permission from the Board of Selectmen to close the town offices in all town departments for this event. The event will be held at the Great Hall. Staff will be expected to attend various team-building events hosted by the Wellness Committee. So that's what we have in front of us.
And that's a Friday, just as an FYI.
Yeah, it is a Friday.
And it's a week after we normally do it, but it's always on a Friday.
We've approved it every other year. I think it's a great event.
Make a motion, we approve September 7th, 2024 as our annual Employee Appreciation Day.
And close town offices.
Close the town office.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, I have a motion by Dave, a second by Brian. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Wait, I just had one quick thing to say. This is actually going to be like a kick-up for our fall festival, right?
I thought you were going to do that in other business.
No, but I'm saying this, the Employee Day will be a kickoff for our fall festival because that's going to be the 27th, 28th, and 29th, that weekend. So this is a great time for our employees to have off.
Okay. Any other further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay, Brian, other business.
Okay. Drive Electric Week begins the same weekend as our Fall Festival Day. The Energy Committee wanted me to come to the board and just ask an informational piece. They want to have a Drive Electric Week car show. This happens all over the country. They're estimating there'll be 10 to 12 cars from owners of electric vehicles from the town of Wolfeboro. They wanted to know if it would be reasonable to reserve 10 or 12 spots down at Foss Field during that Saturday and the Chili Fest. And if we think that the board doesn't have any concerns with the 10 to 12 spots, they're going to bring forward a special event permit at our next meeting.
we've never not allowed something like that to happen, so I think that is reasonable.
Yep.
All right,
Okay,
I'll
that give you
I'll bring
what you
that
need?
forward to them.
All right. Next, I have other business. I want to remind the board that we'll meet on September 11th in non-public after our work session on Route 28 to review the town manager's evaluations. And then on September 18th, we will meet with the town manager to go over those evaluations. Does anybody else have any other business? All righty. Mr. Planio, do you have more?
Few items. First of all, I will be coming in front of you at our next Board of Selectmen's meeting, I believe it's on the 18th, to authorize me to sign a contract extension renewal with Stewart's Ambulance. The ad hoc committee and MRI are moving along diligently. However, there's no way that we will be in a position to take on that service in short order. Within our existing contract, we had to advise Stewart's Ambulance by August 31st if we wanted to extend. We made contact with them early in August, advised them that we wanted to extend, and the contract, when it comes in front of you, it will have an extension until 2027. It does allow for an opt-out if the town decides to take over EMS operations, and I believe it's a 4% escalator, or August's CPU, Consumer Price Index increase. So that'll be in your next packet to give me authorization to sign that. Had a meeting, I guess it was last week, with Woodard and Curran to discuss the 2024 projects that were approved as the warrant and what they're proposing for 2025, preliminary conversation about that. As well, anticipate them coming in front of you sometime in November to discuss and give a presentation on options for the wastewater treatment plant, whether it's replacement, hybrid, or renovate the existing facility. As well, one of their longtime operators has recently retired. If you recall, we entered into a contract with them, I believe it was in 2022, for 5 years. It's a cost-plus contract. And in my conversation with Dave Didion, Fred Woodward and Curran, they would like to pursue entering into a extension with the town a little bit earlier. And part of their rationale behind it is staffing. If they know that they have 7 years worth of a contract, they do believe it'll be easier for them to bring on staffing, knowing that it's a little bit longer of a term contract. So anticipate that coming for you, in front of you for consideration going forward. I don't see a reason to put that out to bid. They seem to do a nice job for us, and they have a thorough understanding of the plant, spray fields, RIB sites. So I'll continue to work on that. Pop Whalen is scheduled to open on September 22nd. That's a Sunday. Libby Museum, you may have seen an article in the Union Leader. I met with the press, discussed that. As well, I signed a contract with H.L. Turner. Brad, did they give you any indication as to a time frame of when they would start?
No, they didn't.
Okay. Once they give us a time frame, I believe it's a 45-day turnaround from when they start the work to getting us a report. So hopefully we'll have something for the 2025 warrant, or at least information. We've begun, we had a ground rules meeting for union negotiations with our 2 collective bargaining units. We've talked about the bike trails. This coming Saturday at 9 a.m. in this room, there's a property auction for town properties. I just need the board to authorize me to sign any documents that day.
Anybody want to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to allow Jim Pinio, the town manager, to sign any documents needed on the day for the auction of our town-owned properties.
Do I have a second? Okay, Dave. I have a motion by Brad, second by Dave. Any further discussion?
I just
for
have one
Brian?
question. Are there parameters set that there is a required amount for these properties to sell? Is there a reserve for the auction?
There is not. There is not. I do know, in correspondence with the auctioneer, one of the properties has had 44 visitors. So it's, looks like it's going to be fairly well attended. And on top of that, just as an FYI, from that point, it's 45 days for the final execution of the agreement, just so you're aware. And then CIP is in process, beginning to review department head budgets. And just a reminder of the September 11th workshop regarding South Main Street Route 28 in this room. And we've got an election coming up next Tuesday, I do believe. That's all I've got.
Okay, so I've got a motion by Brad, a second by Dave, in order to give Jim authority to sign. Any other discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor? Aye. Okay, you have that authority. I have one question for Jim. Where is that capacity study on the sewer and water? It seems to go and then it kind of disappears, and my understanding is Wooden and Kern were going to give us a second opinion on that.
Yep.
And I think that's something we should get to the top of the list of something that needs to get completed. It's a couple years old at this point. Righty. Committee reports. I'll start down with Dave.
I had, as Jim mentioned, 2 meetings with the unions, one with AFSCME and one with the police commission. Also had a hazard mitigation meeting. That's all I have.
Brad?
Had a planning board meeting last night. Had a 2-lot subdivision in there, and then we had a pre-application discussion with the, well, I believe it's Wolfeboro Bible Church is the name of the church there, for a parking lot extension. Attended the hazard mitigation meeting with Dave, and I'm not sure when the dates were since our last meeting or not, but we had the interviews for the Public Works Department positions there. Can't remember if that was before or after our last meeting, so it's in
In
there
that
again.
time frame.
Somewhere in that time frame.
Okay, I'll do mine. I had 2 CIP. You and I went to you, 3 of us went to an informational meeting on this water line going down South Main Street. That was, we went and learned about, not well attended. I think the Board of Selectmen were the largest group. I went to a Friends of Pop Whalen meeting. Brian and I met with the Abenaki Outdoor Club. We've had discussions about the MOU. Brian and I came up with what we heard from them. They took the MOU draft, and these are just drafts, and took it back to their group. They have returned with other suggestions, and Brian and I have sent that over to Jim and staff to get us some understanding of the staffing and costs for some of the suggestions that are in that, and so that we're working on that. The other thing is the Wolfeboro Waters Committee were contacted by the lake host at Mass Landing saying that there were people going on to Lake Wentworth which had a cyanobacteria warning, and there was no warning at Mass Landing, so Wolfeboro Waters brought their fact sheet to Mass Landing, and the lake host was handing that out to people going in, so we were able to cover that. I walked the bridge, the bike trails with Jim, and I had a Wolfeboro Waters Assessing Subcommittee meeting. Brian?
So I attended the 2 CIPs with Linda and was glad that now the fire department is going to include the ambulance equipment on the CIP. It's going to be put in it with a placeholder. And we have I had 2 ad hoc ambulance committee meetings, and those are going well. We're starting to dive in and get into the meat and potatoes, and everybody is impressed, Jim, with your analysis of and we're using that as kind of a starting point for where we're going to go with that. And was with Linda at the Abenaki Outdoor Club meeting with their MOU, and I think that we should be able to hammer something out. I'm hoping. That's all.
Okay. Is there any questions from the press? Are we even up?
It appears we are, but I do not see Alyssa on.
Okay. All right. This is public input, 3 minutes per person, not to exceed 15 minutes. Is there anybody in the audience who would like to give us some public input? You waited all that time.
Still Mike Bogart. I've been a full-time resident here for about 12 years. This year I joined the senior club. I lost my wife 5 years ago. I live in a single wide mobile. I have pretty nice neighbors, but in the winter, there's really not a lot to do, you know? And this spring, I was talking to a woman in the park. She suggested I join the senior club, which I did. Amy took us on a nice trip to the State House. It was lovely. But there's a place down on Lerner Street, the community center. I went down there. It's open 3 hours twice a week. And this building looks like the only thing holding it up is a half-inch thick white coat of paint. I mean, this building's had it. It's got a little kitchenette. The plumbing, I think, was put in by blacksmiths. I don't think it's modern plumbing. Folding tables, folding chairs. You go there and there's probably a dozen elderly people there, and they play dominoes and whatever they're doing. They're really appreciative of this. But, you know, I'm wondering, why can't we do better? I mean, there's a pad, there's a keypad on the door that's broken. And so my thinking is, why can't we fix the keypad? Show and tell. See this here? This is a key that I got in 1972 for Eastern Rifle and Revolver Gun Club in Lynn, where members could come and go whenever they wanted. Now, I don't know why we can't do something like that on Lerner Street. You know, fix it up a little bit, reinstall the pads, give the senior members a key so they can come and go when they want to. Maybe we could, upgrade it a little bit. Maybe like a TV, you'd have to get Breeze Line to put maybe something in there for us. Or, I mean, you could do better than what you got. I would ask, and I got to tell you, looking at you guys, you know, you're all getting there, not for nothing, but you're going to be there someday, okay? And I would just invite any one of you people to just take a ride. Next time you're riding through, take a walk in and take a look. I mean, these ladies that were there when I was there, they were just so happy to just have that. It kind of broke my heart. You know, I mean, I think we could do better. That's all I'm saying. And I just invite any one of you, stop by there sometime and take a look and tell me if I'm wrong.
Thank you. Anybody else? Public input? Seeing, hearing none, can I have a motion to go into non-public?
So move.
Second?
Dave? Yes?
Second,
Ed?
yes.
Yes.
Yes. Brian?
Yes.
Okay.